Hi there! This is a video overview for BIMM's new Masters in Learning and Teaching in the Creative Industries. In this video I'm going to talk about the aims and structure of the course, as well as a sense of the content and typical learning journey you might expect as a student. I'm going to touch on some of the potential career progressions into teaching and end on the application process and look at the state of fees and funding. Before I do that, I think it's worth just considering why we might be running this course and why you might choose to take it. Now, this can break down into three kinds of questions: why we might want to become teachers, why specifically teachers in the creative industries, and why we might want to take a master's qualification to do that. Well, firstly, when we think about teaching, fundamentally, I think teaching is an opportunity to help people, to put out good into the world and to get the benefit of watching other people grow from our efforts. You know, at bedrock, this is about helping other people, and there's something tremendously enjoyable about that. Still, it's true that teaching does offer a certain amount of job security and potential for professional growth and to support our kind of wider creative learning, particularly when we think about how the creative industries involve a lot of portfolio work, a lot of self-employed work. Teaching can become a kind of stability within that. So in a sense, teaching can become part of your wider portfolio career, can support your other creative work, or indeed it could become the mainstream of income for your career. Now, from my personal experience and the experience of many people on our course, actually I think teaching itself can become a creative practice. So rather than just kind of supporting the other creative work we do, we can come to find teaching itself to have its own reward, outlet and passion. Ultimately, as a teacher, we never stop learning, we never stop developing, and there's something really fun in that. Now, when we think about the creative industries, obviously we, as creative professionals, have a kind of attachment to our own subject, but I think it's worth noting that the creative industries as a collection of, music, digital media, arts, well, this is a huge growth area actually, particularly in the UK and also global economy. So there's increasing work being created out of the creative subjects. Because of that, interestingly enough, creative subjects like music and also the wider skills of creativity are kind of being re-recognised as a priority for education. Particularly in the UK, there was a previous attitude that the sciences, technology kind of trumped the arts and that the arts weren't really worth teaching children. Now that's beginning to change, however there is still a need to kind of fight for the right of the arts in society, and I think there's something really engaging about becoming part of that fight. So this is wrapped up both in the kind of economic prosperity of being a creative, but also, this role of kind of sharing the passion that we were given by our own teachers, sharing this passion of the creative subjects and our interests. So that's all well and good, but why might you choose a master's in particular to do this? It is true, you could become a self-employed teacher really without any qualifications, so why do you kind of want to engage in a course around this? Well, fundamentally, a master's is a considerable opportunity to develop very broadly and very deeply in a whole range of aspects, not just your teaching practice, also your ability to think, to take informed perspectives when doing things, to be more creative, to take charge of your own learning, your own interests, and really to start making a kind of greater capacity to change the world based on your own interests. To be slightly more practical, it's also true that postgraduate teacher education is highly employable. So thinking specifically about institutions like further education colleges, universities, teacher education like a master's, like a PGCE, are kind of required to teach in those places. Now you might choose to take a PGCE, a postgraduate certificate in education. What we would say is that the focus of those courses tends to be narrower. So they will teach you a particular subject, say the GCSE music curriculum, and then they will help you teach it. And that's great if you want to go into school teaching and you want to learn the national curriculum. But if you ever want to change, if you want to do more kind of broad, more flexible work, then it doesn't really teach you the skills of learning and adapting to new situations. Now, masters are fantastic for this, particularly for their focus on research. You know, learning the skills of answering difficult, complex questions. And within the process of undertaking master's level research, you can build your capacity for self-direction, for creativity. And if you're interested, you can bolster your ability to progress into further academic careers, doing things like taking a PhD or working in a research university. So, the BIMM Masters. First, we're going to look at it in quite broad terms, and then I'll take you in some detail through the modules and the assessment on the course. If we start off by thinking about what the course is, in essence, well, the full title is Master of Arts in Learning and Teaching in the Creative Industries. Now, in technical terms, the course is 180 credits. A credit is simply a calculation of the amount of work required for a qualification, and all of those credits are at level 7, which is master's level. Now, the focus of the MA is on two things. Firstly, we're here learning about how we teach adults. So really this is the ages of 16 and up, which is looking into further education and higher education. So if you want to become a school teacher, really there are probably other qualifications that are better suited for you. And ultimately we're also looking at the creative subjects. The course is very practical, it's hands-on. We want to get you in the process of teaching to help you become an effective and a reflective teacher. Being a master's, there is an academic component, so we are here to help you develop in your research skills, in your kind of research and academic literacies, being able to understand how teaching theory is generated, to get involved in making your own knowledge when it comes to teaching, and being able to look more discerningly at all the information that's out there. For us, all of these skills are just really useful for professional teachers. So some of you might want to get involved further in academia, some of you might not, but either way this is going to be great for you. I'd also want to note actually that although these master's courses at BIMM are relatively new, actually we've got a very long history of doing postgraduate teacher education here at BIMM. Our previous PG Cert course, Postgraduate Certificate in Learning and Teaching, that was established in 2006, and a lot of the same teachers on that course are now teaching these MAs. So you can meet the team if you like. This is who would be teaching you in BIMM Brighton. That's me at the front, Jerry Lewis, and really what I want to do here is just kind of showcase to you the wide experience, the diversity of background in some of the people that will teach you on the course. We have here people with considerable research experience, both with their doctorates and in kind of wider educational and musical research. We have here people that have been teaching in many different ways with many different years of experience, and we have people who've been involved in wider professional work, educational consultancy, and kind of corporate curriculum mentoring, that sort of thing. So if we go on to think about why we kind of teach the course in the way that we do, what our ethos is when it comes to training teachers, fundamentally our position is that if we want to become expert teachers, we need to learn how to think and how to solve problems like really, really experienced teachers do. We don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all to teaching, and because of that you can't really teach by numbers. You have to find your own approach and your own way of working out how to teach your particular students, how to teach particular subjects, and how to leverage your own style as a teacher. Now, in order to do that, actually we do need a reliable kind of background evidence base to inform those decisions and those teaching practices. So there is a component where we have to kind of learn what the established practices, principles are, and then we will adapt them, then we will solve problems with them. The way that we learn and we start interacting with that evidence base as a course is through a kind of group process. So we're very focused on collaboration within this Masters. We have a lot of peer learning throughout the course, and the fundamental use of this is kind of two things. Firstly, you get to see how a wide variety of people are processing their own teaching, processing new teaching techniques and theory. So you get more options there. You get to see what it means for different people. But secondly, those people, those peers on your course can also help challenge you. They can help question what you know, what you do, and so kind of build up your teaching practice into a more developed thing using feedback. So at its heart, you can see this course as balancing between a collaborative approach to your learning throughout it, a critical approach to thinking about teaching, your own teaching, wider education in society, and a creative component in being able to be self-directed, to come up with new and interesting ideas. And really we're aiming at developing those three things in tandem. I will share with you some quotes, some feedback we've had from people on the course. First of all, a student said that they like how there is a solid structure to the course, but that there is significant freedom to explore the subject and go in any direction you wish. There is a real focus on making the work and research relevant to one's own practice. Another, the lecturer support is amazing. We are given freedom, but then have the chance to get formative feedback on anything and at any point. And another, the lecturers we have had so far are also extremely knowledgeable and really help to cement all of the ideas and theories. Now, that's from people currently on the Masters. I will say, at this point, they haven't finished their studies. So what I'm going to do is just share another couple of quotes with you from people on our previous PG Cert course who came out the back of their qualification and so have a kind of different perspective on what the experience of the course was. I felt empowered to draw upon my more challenging experiences in a constructive and honest way. You really understood where I was coming from. Your feedback and support helped me overcome some of the most difficult personal and professional challenges I've had to date. So hopefully those just give you a flavour for what some of the students through our course say, some of the experiences they've had. Let's move on. So the Masters in detail, let's look at the structure of the course and the kinds of pathways and journeys you might take within it. So within the course you will do a selection of 4 taught modules. Now these modules might be slightly larger, slightly more involved than you might have done at undergraduate level, and one of these will be a choice. So you will take one optional module that will allow you to specialise into a kind of more refined area of educational practice. So this could be course design, this could be one-on-one coaching and mentoring, or it could be some more involved educational theory and philosophy. So you'll do those 4, and then either a research dissertation, so undertaking a research project and writing up a very involved dissertation for it, or you'll do a smaller report of that same research project alongside taking a practical placement within BIMM. So we'll actually put you on a module within BIMM Institute and you will be mentored by a specialist lecturer of that subject. Now the choice between these 2 final routes actually defines a kind of pathway within the course. So we accept that there are multiple kind of backgrounds that people will come through when taking this Masters. Some of you might be quite early in your careers, so you might be new to teaching, or you might feel like a novice, you might not know your way around the classroom much yet. In which case you'll take a more practical version of the Masters. You'll spend time on teaching placements, and some of your core modules will just focus on those fundamental skills of teaching, of assessment and of feedback. Now this pathway is offered both full and part-time, so you can study it over 1 year or 2 years in a more spread out version. Now some of you might actually be more experienced. You might already be qualified as a teacher, or you might have some considerable years of experience under your belt, in which case, great, you won't take a teaching placement. Instead, what we'll ask you to do is focus more on your leadership. So thinking about how you can lead, how you can sustain positive change in education, and this will then involve you doing that larger piece of research at the end of your course. This pathway is just offered part-time at this point in the course, simply because we appreciate that most people that this pathway refers to will be working probably full-time already in education. So let's look first at the journey through the early career pathway. I'm going to show you the 2-year part-time version first. Now this is nice because you get the opportunity to spend your entire first year focusing on developing as a teacher, and then the majority of your second year getting involved in academic research. So you actually get to split those two kind of strands of your development out and really focus in on each of them. The yearly calendar is broken down by semester, really. So semester 1 takes place between September and January. Start the course in September, study all the way through past Christmas. Semester 2 then starts in February and goes all the way through to June before the summer, and then you actually take a third semester where the undergraduate courses aren't running, and you take a kind of summer semester through June all the way up until early September. Now, as an early career student, you'll be taking a teaching placement. That takes place between September and June, so the first 2 semesters where you'll be on placement with the undergraduate modules. In terms of your academic modules, you'll first start out by taking a module called Teaching, Learning and Assessment, and this is your introduction to teaching practices in further and higher education. It's looking at the skills of planning, delivering lessons, giving feedback, that sort of thing. In the second semester, you take a module called Creative Educational Practice, which is all about what creativity actually is, how we can teach in more creative ways, and actually starting to think about how we can assess and make judgments about creative performances. In the summer semester, this is where you get your choice of optional module. So this is where you can specialise into course design, one-to-one coaching, or further educational theory. Looking at the second year, also broken down by semesters, you will still take your teaching placement throughout that second year, because we appreciate that for most people the research that you'll focus on will probably be research about your own teaching practice, so you'll need to get some of that teaching in order for you to think about it and research it. In the first semester, you'll take our module Investigating Learning and Teaching, which is your introduction to educational research. You will practice different methods of research there, and ultimately you'll come up with a research proposal for a project, which will probably be the project that you write up in your final report. So you can see there's a through line all the way through the course. Your first year primarily focused on teaching, your second year also teaching, but focused on how you research, how you learn about that teaching in more depth. Now, if you want to do the course full time, you're more than welcome to, and it's quite simple. The modules all happen in the same place, teaching placement happens at the same time, you just do everything together. So this means that you take 2 modules at a time, as well as your teaching placement in the first 2 semesters. So if we look at the pathway for more experienced educators, this is slightly different because you won't be taking a teaching placement through the course. You'll actually start with the module Investigating Learning and Teaching, because fundamentally we accept that most professional teachers won't have been that focused on their research up to this point, and so that module doesn't just inform the final research project, it informs your ability to engage with the theory of all of the other modules, so it kind of gives its value added right at the start. You will still take the core module Creative Educational Practice, and you will still also get that same choice of specialisation with your optional modules. In the second year, you will take the core module Leading Educational Change, which provides your step up into leadership, management, and thinking about how we both effect, initiate, and sustain change in different educational roles. That itself then leads into your research dissertation, which is your extended project, and a kind of larger, more lengthy write-up of that research. So at this point in the video, I'm actually going to go even more into depth with every module available on the course. So what I'll invite you to do is kind of to pause the video, skip ahead, just look at the modules that are relevant to the pathway you might take, or if actually you're kind of fine with the amount of info you've got, just skip ahead, go start looking at the sections on potentially assessment and study hours. So the first module on the early career pathway is teaching, learning and assessment. So this is core. It's technically 30 credits. All of the taught modules are 30 credits, and as I said, this is just for the early career pathway. Teaching, learning and assessment is all about engaging with a range of teaching techniques, approaches, theories about learning, all relevant to different teaching roles in post-compulsory education. The module focuses on getting you competent in planning, delivering teaching, assessing learners, giving them feedback, and supporting different forms, different styles of learning. I will say, usefully, we don't actually assume any different kind of teaching experience or knowledge about teaching that you might have prior to the course. So if you're coming in blind, this module will absolutely be for you. If you have some experience and knowledge of it, don't worry, this will give you a step up in a lot of different ways. And for some people, will just help you understand what you do already in a slightly more refined and informed way. Investigating learning and teaching is also a core module on both pathways. So this is the introduction to research, also 30 credits. This module kind of grapples with a variety of different theories, practices of research that are used in the real world. So we're specifically looking at educational research, usually research methods for more creative subjects in education as well. What you'll do throughout the module is explore and actively use different methods, different methodologies of research, particularly research investigating the kind of quality of experiences, and research involved in understanding yourself and your own practice as a teacher. The whole point of this module is to use research to better understand what learning is, to better understand how we can teach within the creative subjects. Throughout this module, you'll be trying different methods of research, but you'll also be thinking about what you want to research in your final project. So the assessment for this module asks you to come up with a proposal potentially for that project. So you'll write a proposal, you'll do some initial kind of trial study, you'll generate some data, you'll think about that data, and you can then use all of that stuff to actually go towards your final project. Next we have leading educational change, which is a core module just for the experienced pathway. So what this module does is look at what leadership is within contemporary education. So looking at theories of leadership, looking at the practice of how we lead at different levels, different kinds of organisational relationship. So the whole idea of this module is to take an individualised approach to help you learn to lead, and also lead to learn. And we'll talk about what those two different roles are, obviously, throughout the module. The whole point is that we give you an opportunity to develop and reflect on a personal style and approach to leadership. Again, as with teaching, there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and so we're helping you develop in your own practice here. For the assessment, this is quite interesting. You'll actually choose and explore a personally significant challenge to your leadership based on where you're leading, based on your organisational context, and you'll engage with a small group of peers and negotiate what that challenge is, and negotiate how you're actually going to produce something that will demonstrate whether you've learnt something on the module. So you'll engage in negotiated assessment, which ultimately is another example of you taking charge and ownership of your learning process. Next we have creative educational practice, which is a core module available to both pathways. So what this module is an exploration of creativity and all of its manifestations within education. So this is looking at what creativity is, how we teach in more creative ways, and how we assess creative subjects. The module is highly experiential, so we get you engaging in creative work. We try and teach this module in a creative way to model some of the practices that you might use as a creative educator. The whole point here is that we are getting you as a learner and part of a learning community to really explore what creativity is, to try things out, to reflect on them, and to start working out what some of your answers to these difficult questions are. This module is the furthest away from a traditional higher education experience that you're probably going to get on the course. It's very much self-directed, very much constructed as a learning community, and that makes it really, really interesting. Next, we have an optional module. This is curriculum and instructional design. So as an optional module, it's available to both pathways. And really, this is all just focused on how you develop courses and curricula. So this is specialising into course development, both offline in educational settings and potentially online learning as well. So we look at a variety of different approaches, different philosophies and methods to making courses. As I said, this involves looking at digital courses, blended courses, looking at courses made for individuals versus collaborative and group learning. Really, the idea is that you will just develop a course throughout this module, and we will give you lots and lots and lots of tools to do that. The next optional module that we have is Education, Ideology and Society. Again, this is available to both pathways, and really the specialism here is about engaging further in academic study relating to education. So what we do is engage you in a range of critical theoretical positions on education and also the curriculum, although not looking to build courses but looking at why we teach what we teach. So these are looking at quite philosophical questions really on what we teach, how we teach it, and why we do all of these things that we do in education. So we'll explore a variety of aims and ideologies at play within educational theory. We'll learn to engage with these ideas through analysis, through debate, and then we'll use these different theoretical languages to actually turn inwards to examine what we do and to examine what the school systems do, what higher education does, so that we can think about our practice more deeply. Our final optional module is coaching and mentoring. Now again, this is across both of the pathways, and here the specialism is becoming a coach or a mentor. Now both of these professional roles are one-to-one work, so they're about partnering with a client, with a mentee, with a coachee, which takes a kind of person-centered, quite humanistic approach. So this isn't about assuming that I'm better, I'm more knowledgeable than the person I'm working with. Really, it's all about empowering the person, partnering with the learner, and getting alongside them to support their development. Again, through this module, it's practice-based. You will get involved in coaching or mentoring someone, and you will participate in critical and reflective learning to actually investigate what that new practice is like. One of the cool things about this module is that you will get supervision, which is a professional term for one-to-one support, from a very experienced coach. So you will work with your own mentee or coachee, you'll try and help their development, and then you'll take all of that to your supervisor and they will help you think about it and learn about that practice more deeply. Finally then, we have your final research. Now throughout the course you have to do some kind of final research project, but obviously the choice of that particular project depends on your pathway. So if you're on the experienced pathway, you will do a larger 60 credit research dissertation. So this module basically gives you the opportunity to develop an extended piece of research exploring a chosen area of either academic interest or a kind of piece of your professional practice. You'll get individual supervision and you will do that research. If you take the early career pathway, you do a report and teaching placement. So your research is slightly smaller, that's only 40 credits, and then we award you 20 credits for your engagement with your teaching placement. So you will still get involved in investigating and improving a specific area of your own teaching practice or an area of your academic interest, but the whole idea is that we will give you that bedrock of teaching. You'll be on a module and you will take a credit-bearing placement, what we call a practicum of learning. And a useful thing about this is that this placement gives you enough hours to be recognised as being an initial teacher education programme, an ITE. I'll speak about this in a bit, but if you do choose to work in further education, this means that you can apply for qualified status, a QTLS, which happens through the Education and Training Foundation. So the question I'm sure many of you are asking, quite rightly, is how long am I going to have to spend studying on the course? What's my schedule going to look like? Well, this is quite a complex question to answer. It depends a lot on the pathway you study and whether you study full or part-time. But if we first just look at what it takes to study one module. So each module will be delivered across the 12-week semester, and you will have some form of evening session. So usually this might just be 12, say, Thursday night sessions from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. That's very typical. Usually these will be face-to-face. Some sessions might be offered online. In addition to that, you're going to need to prep for the session. You're going to need to kind of develop and extend your learning out the back of it as well. So this could be some prep in terms of reading, and we might ask you to actually apply something to your teaching, to reflect on it and to report back on it with your group. Also, every module is going to have some form of workshop delivery as well. So we run our workshops on weekends. So this could be a Saturday, could be a Saturday and a Sunday. These days run from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. Now, the modules are delivered in different ways. So you might have 12 evening sessions and a Saturday. You might have 3 two-day weekends and then some kind of sporadic evening sessions throughout the module. But across all of the modules, they do equate to roughly the same hours. Finally, on every module, you get the opportunity for 2 different developmental tutorials, each of them up to an hour long. So these are really highly praised by our students. You can do these face-to-face, or we can do some kind of online tutorial with you as well. It's a really in-depth opportunity to get great feedback and a lot of support from your lecturers. So that's a module, and you can think that will scale up. If you're doing the course full-time, you'll perhaps do 2 of those modules at once. You might also be doing a teaching placement. So for the placement, if you're full-time, you'll be spending at least 5 hours a week throughout semesters 1 and 2 in some kind of educational capacity. So we can offer all of that within BIMM, and you'd be on 2 different modules, 5 hours a week, in kind of total. The whole idea here is that by the end of the course, you need to have accumulated at least 100 hours of teaching practice. So if you're studying part-time, actually you would split your placement across the 2 years and it becomes slightly more manageable. You'll also need to engage in teaching observations. So this will involve us coming into your placement, seeing you teach, sitting down with you after you've taught, giving you some feedback and really talking through what happened in a supportive way. We also offer micro-teaching workshops, which again are kind of weekend delivery where you will plan a lesson, you'll deliver it to other people on the course, and you'll get a really rich opportunity for feedback and development. There is also always on these kinds of courses more time that you're going to be spending specifically around the assessment points, writing, preparing your assessments, perhaps carrying out your research, which is just impossible to calculate within the kind of module delivery. Still, I hope this gives you a kind of rough framework for thinking about what you're going to be doing week to week, and again, you can scale this up and thinking about the pathway, thinking about part-time or full-time. Another very reasonable question is asking, okay, how am I going to be assessed? How am I going to be graded? Well, on this MA, each module gets assessed, and usually that's split in terms of some form of academic assessment, some kind of practical assessment as well. So in terms of the academic, you're likely going to be familiar with the essay. We tend to get people involved in more reflective writing, so thinking about describing a particular teaching intervention you took, analysing what happened, evaluating to what degree it worked, and reflecting on what you've learnt out of that whole process. Of course, we also get you to report, to write up your research projects as well. In terms of practical modes, really the practical assessment is teaching. It's actually, showing us your practice, potentially pulling together a portfolio, say, of the resources for the course you're developing in that optional module. Now, the thing I do want to say is that at the module level, everything is assessed on a pass-fail basis. So you don't get any kind of percentage grades. Really what you get is an opportunity to get feedback, to develop in your work, all the way through up until the end of the course. So the MA is graded, but what you do is you get your grade through a final portfolio of work, which you submit right at the end of your studies. What this means is that you do certainly have to pass your academic modules, but they become a developmental opportunity to take risks, to experiment, and to get fantastic feedback on how you can improve your thinking and your teaching. You can change and adapt any of those module assessments all the way up until your final portfolio, which means the grade you get for the MA actually represents the standard of your teaching and of your thinking right at the end of that course. Now, earlier I mentioned this phrase, professional status. So there are two kinds of professional teaching status that are relevant to this Masters. They are QTLS and Fellowship of the HEA. So this is really thinking about what it means to be a professional teacher. Now, professional teacher status is relevant really to specific countries. So I'm talking about UK teaching here in particular. For schools and for further education colleges, the two kinds of professional status are QTS and QTLS. So you might have heard of QTS before. This is the qualified status for school teaching. Now this is generally awarded actually as an integrated part of a PGCE course or other kinds of school teacher training. Fundamentally, this is not applicable for our BIMM Masters. Our Masters, again, as I've said, is focused on post-compulsory, post-school age learning. Instead, what we have is QTLS, which is technically the qualified status for 14 plus in the UK. So this is usually focused in further education, but also actually makes you eligible for later school teaching as well. If you did want to move down that route later, actually QTS, QTLS have some kind of legal equivalency here. Now, QTLS is awarded after your Masters, so they don't actually accredit courses. Instead, they wait until you have a course, you have your teacher training, and then you can complete a very short online portfolio. We can guide you through that process. It asks you to evidence your teaching, reflect on your development, etc., and then they will grant you professional status. If you're interested in teaching in universities or higher education, you need to be thinking about the Higher Education Academy, the HEA. So the HEA offer fellowship, which is their kind of professional status, and again this is gained after your qualification, so after the MA. The organisation that awards this is called Advance HE, and they're the professional body for educators in HE or university. Now, I will say this doesn't actually require formally a Masters or another kind of teacher education course. However, our MA really well prepares you for fellowship, and as a team we are highly experienced in supporting people through fellowship, because that was a part of the the PG Cert course that we offer to staff within BIMM Institute. So whichever route you want to go down, if you want to gain qualified status, this course will in some way prepare you for it, and we can certainly talk during your studies about how you might look to gain these things. So finally, I'd like to share with you the admissions processes for the course. So this is how to apply, the entry requirements that we have, and some of the information about funding and fees. So if you are interested in the course and you want to start your application, the first thing to do is to go onto the BIMM website. I've given you a link there. That's where you can find your application form and information about the process. To do the application form, we will need you to provide your previous educational qualifications, both degree level and also looking all the way back to your school experience. Alongside this, we ask you to pull together a written personal statement that will answer three kinds of questions. So what's led you to apply for the course, why you're interested in it, how you intend to study on the course, so how are you going to use your previous experiences in learning and teaching to be successful, and ultimately where you want to take your learning, what your career destinations are for the course. Now, as well as giving us an insight into how you think and how you can write, what this does is it allows us to tailor your interview. So after your application, we'll invite you into a one-to-one interview, and really this is an informal conversation trying to work out whether the course is a good fit. So what we mean by this is whether you are up to the challenges of postgraduate study and teacher training, and whether the course and our form of teacher education is actually a good fit for where you want to go in your career. So in order to be successful in your application, we do require a few things. Firstly, you will need some form of degree, ideally in a creative industries related subject. So at very least this needs to be a 2-2 grade. I would recommend a grade or a 2-1 or a first will more prepare you, or it will indicate that you're more prepared for the academic challenges of postgraduate study. Now, if you don't have a degree, you can still apply, and what we ask instead is that you provide a portfolio that demonstrates your prior professional experience. So you might have been working in the creative industries, the creative arts for many years, in which case you'll probably have done a lot of the same things that a degree would prepare you for. So you can demonstrate whether you're still at that same level. Alongside all of this, you will also want to make sure that you have some form of level 2 qualifications in both English and maths. Now, this isn't a hard requirement of the MA. Certainly if you have a degree, we trust your ability to write and to think at a high level. But level 2 qualifications in English and maths are professional expectations of teaching roles. So if you want to get a job as a teacher in an institution, you will need these things. So if you don't have it by the time you start the course, we would really recommend you actually take those qualifications alongside your MA so that you can help your future job prospects. Finally, I will say it will help to have some kind of experience of teaching or volunteering in an educational setting. Although the MA is designed to support people that aren't yet teachers, fundamentally if you're going to make a choice to study a whole master's in a subject, you really want to make sure you know what this is and that it's something that you want to do. So if you haven't taught before, you haven't got any experience of these kinds of classroom settings, go do some volunteering, go contact a school or a college and go see what it's like. Now, the fees for the course are available again on the BIMM website. They may change year to year, they certainly won't change midway through your study. Here are the current fees. Talking about funding, well, if you're a UK or an EU student, you can fully cover the cost of your fees for the MA through a student loan, which is available through Student Finance England. Similarly, if you are a alumni of BIMM, if you've done a previous course here, actually the institution will give you a considerable discount on your fees. So that's £1,000 on full-time or £500 for the kind of part-time year programs. In addition to that, you can choose to also apply for a career development loan. So we appreciate that, unfortunately, at this point in the UK higher education funding, there aren't maintenance loans as there were in your undergraduate studies. So instead, you could get a loan from a bank. These are called career development loans, as I've said. You can get more information from the UK Gov website. These have higher rates of interest and you start paying them back sooner than a maintenance grant. However, they do give you some financial stability to tie you over while you're doing the qualification. Ultimately, we do appreciate that most students will be working in some form alongside their studies. Our part-time course is ultimately better for that if you need to be studying, or need to be working while studying, and ideally if you could get a job in some form of educational institution, that could help, just kind of minimising the amount of time you're spending on different things during your studies. So that's it for this quite lengthy presentation about the MA, about where it can take you, and about what it takes to apply and to fund your studies on the course. Now, for further questions, further information, you can contact the BIMM admissions team. You can find them online on the website. They'll help you with applications and inquiries. Or you can also contact your local academic team. So at the BIMM college that you're applying for, you can get in contact with the people that are going to be delivering the MA. I'm Jerry Lewis. I'm leading the course in BIMM Brighton, so if you want to get in touch with me, please just drop me an email. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you've got. That's it for now. Take care.